Women's rights, trends, and fashion have been topics that have evolved and transformed the ways we see and treat women in the US over the last 50 years. In the 1960s, the women's movement was the most active as it fought for equal rights for them and fought for equality for both men and women. Women were no longer seen as different or weaker and could work positions that were previously only given to men. The first event was the Equal Pay Act signed by John F. Kennedy in 1963, prohibited employers from favoring one gender over the other. Before this law, women were paid significantly less than men. The next event was the 1964 Equal Employment Opportunity Act, which prohibited workplace discrimination towards people such as sex, race, and religion. Since the 1960s was a decade of change, clothes reflected this as well. Some of the most revolutionary clothes were the bikinis and miniskirts. Miniskirts and bikinis were a big step in breaking clothing stereotypes for women and for also showing that change in the 1960s was reaching even clothing. Other famous fashion trends were high fashion and dolly girl styles. High fashion later became a trend in the 80s again. The 1970s were a continuation to the women's rights movement's fight for equality. People also protested against conservatism, traditional family roles, and the behavior of the current president at the time, while pioneering civil rights for people of color, LGBT individuals, and other minority groups. In 1972, the Equal Rights Amendment was approved to the Constitution and only needed 38 states to ratify it. When the amendment was passed, 22 states ratified it right away. But some conservative activists who were afraid that gender roles were in jeopardy protested against ERA. In 2018, the #MeToo movement got justice when Harvey Weinstein turned himself in at a New York City police station after being accused of sexual misconduct, such as rape and sexual assault, for decades. The #MeToo movement is a movement against sexual harassment and sexual assault. Bill Cosby was sentenced to 3 to 10 years for sexual assault towards Andrea Constand, who was the only woman out of 60 sexually assaulted women, but Cosby, who accused him and won the case. In Miss America, they got rid of the swimming suit contest. In Saudi Arabia, women were finally allowed to drive for the first time in history. These women were very important as they show that change can be gained if the fight for equality and rights continues, regardless of discrimination. The #MeToo movement showed that discrimination will be punished regardless of status. Miss America showed that a pretty woman doesn't have to have a good body, and Saudi Arabia showed that they are willing to give women the rights. Some fashion trends were biker shorts, logo printer shirts, and other clothing articles. Disney clothes, PVC, which basically means translucent clothes, shoes, and bags, dad sneakers, tiny sunglasses, smart suitings, fanny packs, bucket hats. This doesn't look like a big deal to us because we grew up in a time of change, and clothes like this are not something we are surprised about. Think of it in the mindset of a woman who was likely to be judged for wearing pants in the 60s, for not wearing proper female clothing, and now that impact and change feels more real. The change in clothes shows how a woman is no longer chained to a certain stereotype and how every decade change is visible not only in politics and social change, but also in minimal things such as clothes.